push the button?
No.
I believe that the fires were cast upon, on the flames we shall become. I believe in a common calling where our temples pray as one. I believe in the word of wonder and a kingdom for...
What's up? Okay,
Yeah,
happy 4th.
Happy 4th of July.
All right, let's roll into it because we're not going to roll for 2 hours. Okay, so let's talk about Mike Mentzer. So it's weird because things go like, full circle, especially on TikTok. It's all of the kids are interested in HIIT training, about Mike Mentzer, and a lot of them they don't know what his philosophies were or what he really did. And a lot of them are really confused, and a lot of them are really not. I see kids in the gym, they'll come up to you, and a lot of them, especially on TikTok, they're not making gains. And I'm like, you've been training like 2 years, you look the same. So I think a lot of them are just going into the gym and just doing a few sets and they don't know what intensity is. So let's talk about how y'all met and how y'all.
Well, first of all, let me address what you just said. A lot of people are confused because there's a lot of anti-HIIT training people that try to basically downplay the philosophy of the training or try to make it not. I watched a video yesterday. It was Sergio Oliva Jr. and it was on what is that called? That the new podcast.
I heard him. He didn't enjoy with Dorian.
No. You're not. It was last night. It was on the new podcast that just
he did too. I don't know the guy's name. I don't know what he is.
Muscle Discord. Okay.
Yeah.
And he asked Sergio Oliva, he said, so you really didn't think that Dorian's training really worked for you, did you? And he said, well, actually, yeah, it did. He said, but you would have changed it to more volume, right? And he said, well, I would have added one more warm-up set. And he said, yeah, but you would have done more volume, right? And he said, well, yeah, I would have done one more warm-up set. So this guy on Muscle Discord, because he doesn't agree with the philosophy, is trying to tell Sergio Oliva basically what to say because he doesn't like it, because he likes volume.
Mm.
So that's why people are confused. It's not that there's nothing mysterious about high intensity training. It's that there's other people trying to say it doesn't work, where it obviously does work. It's been proven to work. And the philosophy is simply this: the higher the intensity of the training, the less volume you are able to do, and which makes sense. If you train at 50% effort, you're going to be able to do a whole lot more volume than you are if you're training at 100% effort or 100% plus, which means doing beyond failure. Okay. And if you train at high intensity, 100% plus effort, you're not going to be able to do a lot of volume. Now, there's some people that say they can. They're lying. It's not realistic, because once you push the muscle past total failure, you can only do so many sets like that before the muscle is just completely exhausted. And you have to either lower the weight, which means lowering the intensity, and you're not going to be lifting at the same intensity. There's just no way. So the idea is the muscle has an adaptation. It has to adapt to some type of stimulus. And the stimulus is the intensity. The intensity can come from more weight. It can come from doing more reps in a set. It can come from a lot of different things, doing forced reps, negatives, drop sets, various things to increase the intensity. But basically, the idea is the more work the muscle is having to do, the more it's going to have to adapt. And adapt means grow to get bigger and stronger to be able to handle that load. Now, obviously, doing more volume just in itself is not going to work, because if that was true, long distance runners would be, big, and we would be in the gym 10 hours a day, and we just do 100 sets of arms and our arms would be huge. But it doesn't work like that, does it? It's the intensity that causes the growth, not the amount of volume. And again, the higher the intensity, the less volume you're able to do. And anybody who says differently is full of it, because you can only do so many sets at all out 100% effort before the muscle is going to be weaker, because it's broken down and you lost glycogen and ATP.
Like I said, I think, the problem is they don't know what hard training is, or they don't have, they don't lift heavy. Like I'm watching them, or, I have a few in the gym, and I said, try all different training systems, see what you like the best. Everybody responds differently. But a TikTok is mostly, you get the youngest crowd, like 15 years old to 20 years old. That's the most of the people that's commenting on videos, liking on videos. So like when I first went on there, everybody hated me because I was old on there. And I found out eventually the age range, and it took me about a year, but I finally won people over, and they started listening. They just don't know, and they want shortcuts too, and they think okay, this is less work I have to do, and just like everything, they think they're going to grow and take magical SARMs and be a bodybuilder within a year or two. So I think everybody's tried it. I've tried it. Most people have tried all different kinds of training systems, but
I'm gonna comment on that. I hear a lot of people say they train high intensity. I even had people contact me, and these are people that claim that they are high intensity trainers that have been doing it for decades, and they follow Mike Mentzer's principles, and they go all out to failure. And I've had them come to my gym and train with us, and we bury them, and within 2 exercises they're dead. So they think they're training high intensity. They don't even know what high intensity is. They don't know what putting out all out effort is, and until they actually are forced into a situation where you make them do it. I had an older guy. He said he was a Mike Mentzer high intensity training guy. He kept contacting me, wanted to come up and train. He came up and finally came up, and we warm up with leg extensions and seated leg curls. He almost died on those. Mm-hmm. And then our next exercise was hack squats. He made it through 1 set of hack squats. I shouldn't say he made it. He made it halfway through the first set of hack squats, and he was done. And when I say done, he was done with the whole workout. He couldn't continue any longer. He was sick. He was throwing up. He couldn't go any farther. And this is somebody who says he's trained high intensity. So whatever intensity he was training at, he doesn't know what that means. And I can tell you, I was training high intensity. I started training when I was 12 years old. And I was training high intensity by the time I was 14. And when I say high intensity, like really high intensity, I won my first show at 16, and I was already training balls out. But I think part of that is just your mentality, your attitude, and some genetics. Because, for me, I was naturally, I think I have predominantly more explosive white fiber types versus red, because I've always been better at lower reps and higher weight than I am with higher reps. Mm-hmm. So I've trained people, and for example, there was a Asian guy who was a cyclist, but I was getting ready for a bodybuilding contest, and I put him on a leg press, and with a max weight that I would normally fail at 4 or 5 reps, this guy could do 15, 20 reps before failure, because he had just had all these like the red fiber types was more endurance. And he grew from the higher weight, but still it was different. And I think it's just because maybe it's partly genetic and partly because that's the way I trained from when I was young. Because even before I met Mike Mentzer, when I was 13 years old, I met Tom Platz at a guest posing, and he gave me his upper body training manual and his lower body training manual. And I don't know if you guys know anything about Tom Platz, but he was a high intensity trainer as well. Along the lines of Mike Mentzer, very high intensity. Now he claims he did high volume, but he means like more reps in a set. He didn't do like lots and lots of sets. And he also admits that he only grew when he stopped training high volume, the Arnold Schwarzenegger method. And he started training like 3-4 days a week. That's when he started making gains. So
yeah, everybody, they need to try all different things and see what they, adapt best to. Like, I'm a more high volume. I never was that strong. When I switched over to higher volume, that worked best for me. But I always tell people, like, even my website, I have digital downloads you can buy. One's high volume, one's low volume. Tell people, try one for 6 months, try the other one for 6 months. You got to find what your body is going to respond best to. Let's talk about what y'all living together. A lot of people said he was difficult to deal with. He was, smoked a lot of meth, whatever. And I know a guy I used to be friends with, Marcus Reinhardt, did the last instruction video with him. Whenever I forgot what year he passed, but what was it like? How long did you live with him? Talk a little bit about that.
So I actually got introduced by Mike from our mutual friend who was the steroid dealer, and who was grooming me to be the steroid dealer under him. And he introduced me to Mike, and I actually had met Ray Mentzer the week before, and Ray was a total dick. My first time meeting Ray Mentzer, we met at some gym, and I hadn't even said anything more than hi to him. He didn't even know my name, I don't think. And the first thing he says to me, he says, "You think you know something about training? You don't know shit." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay."
How younger were you than him?
I was shit. I want to say I was 18, 19. And he was like a grown man with he probably close to 300 pounds at the time, just huge. So I was going to argue with him.
Yeah. When I went to first, I started at Metroflex in Arlington. Everybody knows Metroflex. When I went in there, I was 15, 16. And I remember, you can always remember the people that were nice and assholes to you when you got started. I remember this guy, Brian, the owner, was super nice to me. I was asking about memberships and stuff, and he gave me a free membership. He does that a lot to a lot of people. He's just a really good guy. But his friend was there, Jay Moore. He was a big white guy. I think that was his name. We eventually became friends later on, but he was just mean as shit to me for no reason. Like, it was just the weirdest thing ever. And then I passed him up by the time I was like 23, and then he started being super nice after that. I was like, I don't remember all those times. I remember all those times you were a dickhead to me when I first came in the gym. I was just a soccer player, skinny kid, and so it's just weird. Like, Jim, that's why I never treat younger people like that. Like, it's just weird. I don't know what's the point.
Well, anyways, a week later I met Mike, and he was like the complete opposite. Mike was like super cool, but when I met Mike, I was shocked to see him because I had seen him in the magazines. He was one of the people I looked up to. And when I met him, he was like, hadn't been training in, I don't know since how long. He had a little pot belly. His arms were probably maybe 13 inches. And wow. He looked like he barely ever worked out. But he was a super nice guy. So anyways, I talked him into training with me. I was getting ready
for Mike at the time. Mike?
Yeah, Mike.
Why was he not training, or what was going on with him?
He was retired. It was after the 80 Olympia. After the 80 Olympia, he was just like quit. He was just
I was born in 83, so this is all before like my time. I don't have any knowledge.
Yeah, that's a problem that a lot of stuff is put on social media about like what happened at the 80 Olympia and this and that. And you have people that arguing about like who was better and whatnot. and they weren't even alive or around then.
No, that's what I was saying earlier. Like on TikTok, like y'all weren't even there. I wasn't even there. That's why I thought it'd be a good topic.
I was there. I wasn't at the show, but I was there on the scene, and I can tell you, everybody in bodybuilding said it was bullshit. Like everybody said that show was rigged. Schwarzenegger shouldn't have won, and Mike was pissed. And not only Mike was pissed, Zane, all of them were. They were all pissed because Arnold just wasn't in shape, and they were all in condition. And they've over the years they've circulated certain pictures that make Arnold look better and other people look worse. But I saw the original pictures that came out right after the show, and you could see the big difference.
What do you think Arnold? Obviously, when you have someone real like with a lot of charisma, like Arnold, and they're kind of fit for it, and and even though Arnold came in, should have lost and all that, it is what it is. It happens today. It's happened over the years. Do you think? What about Arnold and Joe's? Did you know much about their relationship? Obviously, there's a lot of rumors about obviously Joe and certain competitors and all that. Was that back then, or is it kind of like more hush hush?
What do you mean back then?
Well, like him having certain sexual relations with certain competitors and all that.
Well, I can tell you Joe was a flaming homo. That's for sure.
Right.
That I know because I met Joe like lots of times at photo shoots, and he would be like, "Let me put on the oil. Let me put on the oil," and he'd be rubbing up all the competitors. And
all the top people over the years were. That's a perfect job for them. There's muscled up men. You can oil them up. Hey, yeah. You don't think anything of it. They're oil and rub on your, but they're going to go home and jerk off to that.
Well, whatever. I mean, it used to be funny because Mike had me set up where he had me driving a lot of the overseas competitors when they come into town to do photo shoots, like Barry DeMay, Edward Kowak. He would have me driving them to the photo shoots and driving just around to the gym and whatever, because I had a car and they didn't have anything, transportation. So I'd go to the photo shoots to bring these guys. And Joe would always say to me, like, "Why are you always here? Why are you always here?" I'm just like, I don't know. I'm the driver. But I would see everything. As far as like, I know Arnold was his like number one guy. What they did, I don't know about any sexual relation, whether they had one or not. I can't comment on that, but you can speculate as you take a guess. Who knows? And
guys, today we'll answer questions like here and there. We're not going to be able to go to like every single one, so I'll pull up one here and there. Let's see, and we'll answer them in between. What's famous person would be the funniest to go see on trend? I would say Ray Romano. Can you imagine that?
The funniest person to see on trend?
I don't know. Are you asking to have like a tantrum on 10 or I don't understand that question. Someone saying Ashby. Do you know this person? I don't know who they
are. He said that I'm saying I don't know who this person is, saying that I told him whatever.
So you don't know person.
I don't understand that comment actually.
I have a wife. Armon has a wife. How do you make married life not boring and exhausting? Never having another.
Let's go to the questions later because let's finish what we're talking about.
All right, guys. We'll catch up later. So we're gonna do more. We'll get through this, do some questions, and roll into the next subject. All right, go on.
So, anyways, I started training with Mike, and at the time I was living with my mother, and my parents had just got a divorce, and it was stressful at home. And he asked me if I wanted to move in with him. And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, I thought this is great. I can live with
you. Were how old? And Mike was how old at this point?
I was 18, getting ready to turn 19. So between 18 and 19. And Mike, how old was he? I don't even know. Probably, I want to say early 30s.
Okay.
And anyways, so I moved in, and then I didn't realize till after I moved in that part of the deal was that I get to pay for everything. and I get to pay for the rent, the food, because Mike had only income he had was writing like articles for Weeder, and that paid hardly shit.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, I got to pay rent, and luckily I was making money. I was bouncing in nightclubs and at the time, and I was selling gear, so I had enough money to cover our expenses.
So at this time, did he kind of see like, oh, well, this kid is going to learn a lot of information from me, so this is kind of like a trade-off? Is that kind of like how he was treating it?
Well, he knew that, you know, I was serious about competing.
Yeah.
And I think he just wanted to help me because, you know, we got along right away. You know, Mike was a super cool guy. We were friends like from like day one.
Yeah.
And we always got along. We never, I mean, I would say like he used to bitch about Arnold Schwarzenegger sometimes. And he'd say to me, I don't give a shit about Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I said one time, well, for somebody you don't care about, you sure talk about him a lot. He didn't like that. But really, we never argued or anything. He was a great training partner. He did have he's the one that taught me about NPP. And that was our cycle was 300 milligrams of NPP. And we got it from Dr. Jaycott. So it was like real out of the pharmacy. It was 300 milligrams every other day. So basically 3 times a week. That's all we took. And we blew up on that. You take 300 milligrams of MPP at night, and the next morning you wake up and you're like glycogen loaded to the max. And
people like it better too than Deca because it takes such a long time for it to like kick in, and then when you quit it, if you do get side effects from nandrolones, it messes your sex drive up for a while. That's why MPP. So it's weird because MPP disappeared for a long time. Well, I heard of no one taking it at all for probably a good span of probably like 10, 15 years. It wasn't someone talked about it. It wasn't a drug someone talked about at all, at least in the Texas bodybuilding scene. All the bodybuilders I really knew. I never really heard of MPP until I think later when I started competing.
Well, that's the circle you ran, and as long as I've known, there's been MPP since back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's just some people didn't understand it. Like I know Dave, he doesn't agree with the faster acting because he doesn't like test propionate, so he doesn't like NPP either.
I love test propionate. See,
Yes, me too. So basically, some people just like faster acting esters, and some people like longer acting esters. Mainly the people with long acting esters, they don't want to take so many shots. I prefer that I have more control with a shorter ester because, I can take it and see at a certain dose and see what it's going to do. And it's not like it accumulates on top of itself. So like when you take Deca, at a certain dose, you don't really see what it's going to do for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then you're kind of in it, and then you keep taking it and more side effects come because half-life keeps going on top of itself. So your blood levels keep increasing over time versus the shorter esters, you kind of can get a certain blood level and stay there. If you're taking it off.
I like Trin Hex just because I can't handle Trinase. I mean, I can take Trin Hex and not feel like
Trenbolone you're talking about a completely, totally different thing with psychological effects that have and you can't compare NPP and Tren.
No, I'm not comparing. I'm just saying I like, for a lot of people, they're so obsessed with Tren. I have clients that can't take Tren. I got a pro right now. He's getting ready for the Tampa Pro. He can't take Tren. He's the calmest, coolest guy, but Trin Hex doesn't bother him at all. So everybody, just.
Well, I take 10 milligrams of Tren acetate and my anxiety goes through the roof. It's great for training. I'm strong that day, but my anxiety is crazy. And so I don't like Tren at all, in general. It works. It works. But I would say I've gotten just as strong with nandrolone as I have with Tren, just nandrolone and tests. So it's just a matter of that mental part of it. So anyways,
and people start out with that. They don't I looked at Tren like, oh my gosh, this stuff's strong. I think I did like 4 or 5 competitions before I even went that route because I was scared. I knew I had a temper too. So I was just like, okay, when I was younger, now I'm fine. But now that's what people start with. And it's absolutely crazy. And then they don't understand why they can't keep making gains, or they're like, oh, this stuff sucks. I'm like, training is king. I'm like, this is not something you can take like year round and be healthy. You can take tests, and I believe like something like MPP, DECA, EQ, like long term, and be okay. Training is going to mess your blood up really fast, and psychologically too.
Well, it's just a harsher compound.
Yeah.
But anyway, so back to what I was talking about. So I started training with Mike, and he had an amphetamine addiction. And so our ritual was we'd start at the apartment with something called an Obitrol, which was a amphetamine tablet that had like several different amphetamines in it, sort of like Adderall. And then he liked meth. So we drive all the way across the valley to my friend who was a meth dealer, who was a Hells Angels. And we get the meth. And I didn't take the meth because I didn't like, I like to train and be wired up for training, but I didn't want to be wired up after the training was over. And
back
meth,
then, Larry, did you know, like today we know meth is awful. Like I would stay away from meth. Back then it was looked at a different way, wasn't it? Like not as harsh.
I mean, we knew. I mean, I knew it was awful. I already had seen people cracked out on meth and heroin. We had that back then too. So we knew, but I mean, it wasn't like we didn't know, but Mike liked to take that, he liked being like that. So, but anyways, we'd go get the meth, and then we'd go to all the way back to the other side of this valley to the Nautilus, 24-hour Nautilus. And next door to the Nautilus was an espresso shop. And we'd go in there and get a double espresso. And then we'd have these Dexedrine, which are fast acting amphetamine that only last for like maybe 1 hour. And we'd take a 5 milligram Dexedrine spatula, it's called, and a double espresso. And we'd walk into the gym, we'd just like cracked out. We'd be like, I remember walking in the gym, just like lit.
Did you eat on that?
Well, see, the thing is, like the way I did it, I only took the Dexedrine spatula and the espresso. So I'd be cracked out for the workout, but after the workout, I'd wear off. So then, I could eat. But like I didn't want to eat too meth because I wouldn't be able to eat on that. So like we'd be wired out for the workout, and then we go in there and do these high intensity, crazy workouts. We almost used almost all Nautilus machines for those. And it was like full on, to failure with forced reps, negatives, the whole 9 yards.
Did he have his size put back on? Because you said when you met him, he was that size, or did he start?
No, when I met him, he was small.
Yeah.
Like I said, he was a little small guy, and I've never seen anybody grow that fast. In 3 months, he went from like little small 13-inch arms to probably 20-inch arms. And I mean, just wide shoulders, just buff, huge. He wasn't contest.
While he was smoking meth too, he was a good size.
Yeah. I mean, he just grew. Like he grew it seemed like every time we went in the gym and lifted, he got bigger. But, he was it's muscle memory, he was gaining that muscle back. So he went from like normal looking person to like pro bodybuilder size in 3 months. Just massive. And I remember seeing like other pro bodybuilders at the time when we'd run into them at, wherever. Like I remember one time Victor Richards came into the gym, and Mike was standing there talking to Victor. And Victor is the biggest human being I think anybody's ever seen muscle wise, like just ginormous. And Victor, he was like 5'11", over 300 pounds, like almost all muscle. And biggest legs and arms almost you ever seen on anybody. But I remember when Mike was sitting there talking to him, I remember thinking to myself, wow, Mike is actually a little bit wider than Victor, and his arms look like they're about almost as big as Victor's. And Victor's like a 300-pound guy, and Mike probably weighed maybe 250 at the time.
Yeah.
So Mike was big.
How do you compare to that Rubio guy today? Does Victor Richards kind of remind you of that guy?
Yeah, he reminds me of that guy, but um, even freakier looking. And just
Yeah.
because the Rubio guy doesn't have a really small waist, Victor had a small waist. His legs were so big; they were 33 inches, and his arms were like legitimately, probably 22 plus, maybe 23 inches, and there was no
Mhm.
synthol or anything. That was real.
Right.
He was just monstrous. I haven't seen the Rubio guy in person, so it's hard to say, but all I can tell you
Chris
is,
says he's Chris Cormier. I was talking to him the other day. He said he's way different in person. He can't. It's pictures don't do him justice at all.
yeah, it's like I couldn't say. I haven't stood next to him, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember Victor, like he he would be training in the same gym with Lee Haney, Bertle Fox, and all the top pros at the time and worlds, and he was the biggest guy in there by far.
Bertle did. I think he just got paroled. What? Not too long ago. Several
Yeah,
years, right?
yeah.
Was he known as a hothead, or he just had enough when that deal went down?
Yeah, he was a hothead. I knew Bertle from when I was a kid. I started training at Don Peters' gym. He was actually one of the first pro bodybuilders I ever saw. And he had some of the biggest shoulders and arms I've ever seen on any human being. And he wasn't tall. He was like maybe 5'7", 5'8",
Right.
and 22-inch, like solid, like hard arms. And that was like real arms, not synthol or anything. And that guy was crazy strong. He would do like incline dumbbell curls, and he'd bring up the dumbbell all the way up like to his ear with like 120-pound dumbbells. And he would like do shoulder presses with like 150, 160-pound dumbbells for like 10, 12 reps. In crazy strong. And he'd bench press. He'd take 225 on the bar, and then he'd put 35s all the way out till it was 500 pounds. And he'd do strip sets like that. He just like do that 500 pounds for like 3 or 4 reps. They'd pull a 35 off each side, and you keep going all the way down till it was 225.
It's crazy, seeing that. Like I saw Ronnie Coleman at 15, so that's the first bodybuilder I was around, and I just like that's not even ever possible for me. I think I could probably bodybuild because I have good insertions, and people kept telling me like you should do a show, just being natural. But seeing Ronnie like just made you want to quit. It was just insane how he just played with the way, and I'm real good friends with his friend Gus Carter. That was his training partner back in the day. And he would just talk shit to him the whole time. He just loved training. It was crazy to see him over the years, right by him, just train. It was nuts. But so what else about Mike so you lived with him for how long did y'all live together? And then kind of,
I'd say about a year.
Okay.
About a year. I trained with him all the way up till I competed in Teen America at 19.
And did y'all just lose touch eventually?
No, what happened was, so one day Mike just disappeared for like 3 days. We didn't know where he was. And his girlfriend, Julie McNew, she was a female bodybuilder. She was calling me like, do you know where Mike is? I'm like, I don't know. He just up and vanished. And we couldn't get a hold of him. And then he calls me and he's like, can you come pick me up? And I'm like, okay. And so he gives me this address, and I go to this big mansion house in Beverly Hills, and I go up into the place, and Mike's sitting in this big room with this, there was this really long table. At the end of the table, he's sitting on a chair, and next to him is this like little Richard Simmons looking guy. Maybe it was Richard Simmons because he had gold records on the wall. I don't know. But the afro frizzy head.
Yeah.
And he's like rubbing Mike's arm. And I'm just like, what's going on here? Like, this is weird. I'm like, Mike, do you want to go? And the guy's like, show me what you got. Show me what you got. And I'm like, what do you mean? And the guy starts coming towards me. And he starts grabbing at my chest, like he's grabbing breasts or something, like he's grabbing tits. And I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm backing up. He goes, come on, you fuck. Let me touch you. Let me touch you. And I remember there was a stairway, and I backpedaled all the way to the stairway, and I jumped backwards off the top of the stairway to the bottom of the stairway. And like the guy was like, "Come here, you fuck, come up here." And I was like, and I'm like, "Mike, are you coming? Are you going to come or are you staying? Like, what are you doing?" And anyways, I just left because I guess he was staying there. And anyways, I called my father and I told him what happened. He goes, "Yeah, you don't need that shit."
No. So
And,
obviously he wasn't living there rent free. He had to give him something. So
yeah, the guy was like wanting me to get in the whatever it was.
yeah.
So anyways, and Mike came home and he was like, "You got to move out." I'm like, "Okay." So that was that.
Mike said that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you got to move out. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always had, I mean, I've had several roommates that were just effing nuts, crazy, but you know.
Well, I mean, we didn't have a fight or anything. He just, that shit happened. And I guess whatever, he didn't like the way I acted or I didn't want to be involved in it. And
yeah, it's probably, obviously you weren't there to pick him up because he stayed, right?
Well, yeah, he stayed.
And so he's probably calling you, "Hey, I got this buddy that, this younger guy."
Yeah, I just wasn't. I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't want any part of it. But the whole scene was like that. Our landlord at the apartment we lived in was this guy named Lacey Rich, and he was a flaming homo, and a lot of the top bodybuilders was his apartment. We were like upstairs and his apartment was downstairs right below us. And I used to see like all these pro bodybuilders like go in his apartment all the time.
Yeah.
And he let people
live.
This
was in Venice, like Venice area?
It was West Hollywood, actually.
Yeah, okay, West Hollywood. Yeah. When I got into bodybuilding, I didn't know any gay people at all. I was never around them. And then I met my hairdresser guy. He started cutting my hair for free. And then but I didn't know how heavily it was into bodybuilding. I learned pretty quick, but it was just like, man, this is crazy. I thought girls were into this. And I mean, girls were at the time. Girls like, more manly, muscle up men back then than they do now. They it's weird how, what girls go for. What's the norm guys look up to these days. But I just took advantage of it. I mean, I was like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm comfortable with. I'm not going to get into all this sexual stuff with them, but you can pose, you can make money. There's money everywhere. No one talked about it though. Like no one was open about it. I would ask people obviously that were older than me and in that scene, but no one really gave me advice. They just played and I knew, there was rumors that went around like, hey, this bodybuilder will do this bodybuilder will do this. And so, I was in Dallas too. It was, conservative here. The bodybuilders Ronnie Coleman, Branch Warren, Johnny Jackson, those guys, I think, they had to tell Branch at one point, hey man, you got to start being friendly with your fans. A lot of them were gay. He was really just not a social person with the bodybuilding fans, and you kind of had to be. And so his manager kind of tell him, but but I would go out to Venice, and then I would, even this guy named Jimmy Z, he was I don't know how far that name goes back. He owned some websites and he used to put a show on every year in West Hollywood. It was like a entertainment bodybuilding show. So it was this gay bar in West Hollywood, and it was, you go up there and do your posing routine and have a pose off. There was no winners and you didn't diet for it or anything. It was just a famous thing. I think Kai Gree did it before, and then my friend did it the previous year, and so I went out the next year and did it with him, and it was way different. They held it at a different bar, and I'm asking. It was an all leather, but the leather bar, and I was freaking out, dude, this is not what you said it was like. He's like, dude, it's totally different this year, and so we're up on stage, and he's a big weed smoker. So I got to smoke a lot of weed because there's this stage, and it doesn't even give you room to step back. So the guys are grabbing at you and stuff. And I think it paid $4,000. So it was a good amount of money. And then you made money from tips, and then you met certain contacts. But I just remember on stage, we had a pose off at the end, and this guy was talking to the whole night. he was a well-known guy at the national level at that time. I can't remember his name, but the one guy pulls the other. This is being videotaped too. Like they sell these videotapes are really popular afterwards. So this guy pulls this guy's pants down and starts like spreading and eating his ass on stage. And I'm just like, and I'm like, and I just rush off stage. And then my buddy rushes off with me. I'm like, dude, what the F is this? He goes, bro, it wasn't like this last year. And then I called Jimmy back to the owner. I was like, what the, Jimmy, you better edit that out the video. I'm not going to be on stage while two people are doing it. Armon, I didn't know they were going to do that. I was like, I don't give a fuck. You better. He edited it out, but it was just, it freaked me out. And then you met a lot of people there that were your fans, and I got in some pretty scary situations sometimes. But it was, I could tell I have stories for days on that subject. I'll do another video on that. But I would go out there, LA or Venice Beach, West Hollywood, and it was way more open there. All the bodybuilders there were like, yeah, it's go this guy, do this guy, go get my dick, suck to him like 10 times a day by all these. I'm like, dude, you're getting like, that's just gross. And then just all kind of weird fetish stuff. And then there was this house out there that Jimmy Z friend owned. They owned a bunch of like porn stores with videotapes and or whatever, DVDs, whatever was out at that time. And you could just stay at this house in Sherman Oaks as long as you wanted to, as long as you respected the place and do work and do shoots. And I could only deal with like 2 weeks at a time, and then I was out of there. But you could, make $15,000, $20,000 and then split. But so it was very different, like the bodybuilding scene in Dallas, and then going to like out there. But I was going to eventually move out there because I had some friends that live out there like Dan Decker and stuff. And they're like, dude, you have way more opportunities when they want to do a photo shoot. They don't have to fly you out. They'll just shoot you often because you're there. Did you ever get into much of the magazine stuff? What was the big magazines at that time? Like
Muscle and Fitness and Flex, but no, I didn't because right after the Teen America, I won the USA when I was 18. And then I did Teen America for the second time when I was 19. And right after that, I went to prison for 6 years. So I never really got into that, but I did see the whole scene, and that stuff was always going on.
Yeah. Today people ask, I'm like, I tell people it's very different today. So when I see a couple people in the comments, when bikini, I saw the big change when bikini came in. When bikini came in and bodybuilding became more mainstream, you got to understand these bodybuilding shows, it was like a playground for gay guys. And I met a lot of good friends over the years from the gay scene. But once the bikini girls came there, I mean, they brought it was just a different scene, and it ran a lot of the money off that you're able to just make just doing shows. Because at the show, you meet people, do shoots, do posing or whatever. And that's when the scene changed a lot. And then when I was competing, there was gay judges that, like North Americans one year. Remember, Dave helped me with North Americans, and guys sent me an email before. It's like, hey, big fan. Know you're doing North Americans. And I was already in the magazines at this point. I think I was with Muscle Mag at the time. I had a contract, but he's like, hey, I want to, hang out with you. I said, that's cool. This is how much I charge, whatever. He's like, are you cool with kissing and cuddling? And then, I've heard everything at this point. I'm like, nah, like that's not something I do, bro. Like, I just pose. And he's just like, okay, that's cool. No worries. I'll see you at the show. I'm judging the show. I'm like, oh, great. Obviously. So this was like people told me about it, like how certain people did certain things to get to the top. And I was like, okay. And that was the year Sean Roden turned pro at the North Americans. And so Dave's like, you got top threes, like you're good at this show. I placed 8th at that show. And I was clearly like in the top 3, like even, compared to Sean Roden, there was pictures that I beat him in a lot of poses and I was better conditioned than him. And so it was just one of those things I learned. That was about when I was 25 that I learned like, hey, at the competitive level, if you don't do certain things, you're not going to, move ahead. And, you know, it just came out in the Washington Post. They contacted me to do another article about the steroid scene, about killer coaches and all that. I don't know if you read that, but then they did another one after that. I think we spoke about in RX about how all the women was coming out saying, you know, this guy pressured me to do this shoot or this sex and all that. I'm like, the women are coming out, but the same thing were happening to the men. And if we didn't participate, we weren't placing a certain way at shows. And it was just like really obvious, and you couldn't say anything because you would just get blackballed. There wasn't like social media.
I can tell you there's been shows that I competed in back then. And I was like, I went up to, I remember this one show I came in, I finally like nailed my conditioning. I came in right at 225, top of the heavyweights. The guy competing against me, he weighed in at 201. I was like way bigger, way more conditioned, way more everything than him. Like, I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to win this show. Like, I'm for sure like better than him. And sure enough, I get second. And I went to the head judge afterwards, and I'm like, so I don't get it. Like, you told me to get bigger. I got bigger. You know, I'm shredded to the bone. Like, what is it? What else could I do? He goes, you know, it was so close. Sometimes it comes down to just a judgment call. And I'm like, he couldn't give me an actual reason. So he just told me some bull crap. But basically
did you know that was happening at the time, or did you had to learn later on?
I kind of knew. Well, I always knew that that scene was going on, and it's always been. But I didn't really think my placing would come to that. But then there's been shows where I compete, and I'd be like, what the fuck? You know, I don't understand like what happened. And it's not just me thinking it, not being like a sore loser or anything. I look at videos afterwards and be like, there's no way this guy beat me, but he did.
It was very common. And unfortunately, it happened a lot. I mean, it was, you know, someone asked me if Sean Roden was getting freaky. I have no idea, but I will tell you this: at weigh-ins, Sean weighed, I was a heavyweight. I weighed like 218 at that show. Sean weighed in. He was like literally two people ahead of me. I listened to kind of pay attention to everything. Sean weighed in at 235, and they let him compete as a heavyweight. So it was his show. So I don't know what he did. You know, I can't talk about something I don't know of. All I know is he didn't even make weight. It wasn't a couple pounds. Like you would be at some shows where like, if you knew the guy, if it was a pound or two, they would let you buy. I wasn't friends with those type of guys, but I saw that happen. But this was 10 pounds. It wasn't a good 10 pounds. I mean, he came in watery, and he wasn't the Sean Roden you thinking of like on the Olympia stage. But I mean, like, it was very frustrating to get. They wouldn't even put me in the call out with him because I was dramatically I'm not saying better than him, but I think I have the picture post on my TikTok. I did a short story on there, but it was just one of those things that happens over the years that, you know, you really couldn't say anything or you got blackballed. Now they've cleaned it up pretty much. Like there's no more the gay judging, you know, they kind of cleaned it up. And then after I quit, I started judging.
They cleaned it up on the men's side, but not on the women's side.
No.
The women's side, it's like, I know some pro women bodybuilders, and it's like straight out, like if you're not wings of strength, then you're just not going to place. You're not going to do well.
Yeah.
And, you know, wings of strength comes with, doing what they want.
Yeah. It's always going to be there for the women, but for the male side of it, people always ask me, and to me, like, there's no more gay judges that I know of on the national level.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I'm sure.
For the past, maybe if in the past 5 years that they came in, yeah, but in the past 10, 15 years, I knew every single person. If they were, it was extremely private and no one knew about it. But
I'm just saying it's just not the same as like it was before. It was like
right.
The whole scene was like that. Like it was like everywhere.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s, before we had videos and whatnot, the gay guys would line up in front of Gold's Gym and look through the window and just for hours just stare at the bodybuilders training.
Yeah.
And the bodies would be training in there, and they'd just be like a whole crowd of them just like staring through the window. Like, how freaking creepy is that?
It's funny, you know, because like Joe and other people, all the people that was like in the most important, you know, parts were usually gay. And, you know, I got used to dealing with them. I wasn't a problem with that. I had a problem with the competition thing. I mean, also, you know, there was a certain judge that was getting paid off. 10,000 was like the normal price for a pro card. I mean, if you're like 10th, you're not going to be first, but if you're like 4th, you can get first. And that was going on a lot. And that was during the time I was fed up, dude. I was really just tired of just such a dirty scene. And I had double shoulder surgery and I was out 2 years of upper body training. And I came back in 2014 just for fun, and it wasn't fun. So, but it was to that point where I wasn't really that many friends with many of the competitors because they were literally all doing it. And they got their pro cards. And I'm like, this person's not pro. They shouldn't have won that show. This person should have beat them. And it was happening all the time. And so that was a big frustration back then. But the women is always going to be like that because it's all men in charge. And even when I was judging, certain people I was judging with, they were just, they started judging for that reason because they literally couldn't pick up girls. I wanted to judge because I wanted to see behind the scenes stuff and like, what, you know, how do they do all this stuff? And I did, you know, they got rid of those people now, but there were shows where like they come by the head judge or whatever, like, who'd you pick? Blah, blah, blah. Change it to this. I'm like, the first time I was like, what do you mean? They're like, chairman's choice. I'm telling you to change it to this. And so, and I asked the other judges I was friends with, the other on the panel, the head judge, we were all kind of separate. We were all friends. And so they're like, no, we picked that girl. And I'm like, yeah, it's just, and so I saw, but you really didn't know what to do because you're just like, who do you tell? And I didn't have a problem telling it because I was so upset about a lot of placings I had, whether they were paying them off or doing favors. And, you know, but it's like, there wasn't even a protocol to do. To this day, I don't even think there is, but people have a voice now where they can, you know, like have a YouTube channel or have this where, you know, you just
sometimes
can't get
it's
away
not
with
even
it.
a sexual thing, but the head judge just decides.
Right. If you're friends or if they like
know,
that look better.
I was actually competing in a master show, I want to say maybe 10 years ago. And my good friend, who's still a good friend of mine today, she is an IFBB judge, and she was on the judging panel. And she told me that I should have won, but the head judge said no. He didn't want me to win. He wanted this other guy to win. And he told them all that this is the winner. So he just decided.
And they can override it. That's the thing.
He literally just decided. And basically, I know another lady, she was a judge for a while, and she got kicked out of being a judge because she kept disagreeing with him. Like she would argue with him, like that's not right. And so they just canned her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's you know, people get in those positions because they have that power. And unfortunately, it's not like a sport where you go and play and here's a definite score. It's your judge. And so I'm not sure.
Honestly, that's why I always liked powerlifting because
right.
I got into powerlifting when I was 20 years old, and I like bodybuilding because I started as a bodybuilder, but in powerlifting, it's like either you lift the weight or you don't. I mean, there's 3 judges there, and yeah, you have to like make depth, and there's certain things that are questionable about like, but if you really nail that lift, they can't deny you. Like if you're close on the depth, like maybe you just barely are getting parallel on your squat or something. Yeah, maybe they could say something. But if you bury that squat, it is what it is. They can't say no. So
right. I never was strong, so I never got into powerlifting because, you know, I had friends that I was twice the size and they were stronger than me. I would have probably got into it if I would had that strength. I mean, I wasn't weak, but I couldn't, you know, go squat whatever pounds and bench. I was just never good at that. So that's the only reason I never got into it. But if I was
actually
strong,
so I did my first powerlifting meet.
I'm gonna pee Larry. Keep telling your story.
Yeah, I did my first powerlifting meet. I didn't even know anything about powerlifting other than I saw Ed Cohen in the magazines, and somebody told me there's a powerlifting meet. So I'm like, they said, yeah, go ahead and do it. So I went and did it. And I think I bombed my first 2 squats because I didn't know about making depth or any of that. But I ended up winning my first meet just because I was strong from bodybuilding, and I was stronger than everybody else on the squat, bench, and deadlift because I always did those 3 lifts as part of my bodybuilding training. That's how I got into powerlifting in the first place. Oh, and by the way, I just want to make an announcement for anybody interested. I just got promoted to California State Chair for the USPF powerlifting organization. So we are looking for referees and meet directors and spotter loaders and admin people. Anybody who wants to be part of it, contact me. You can contact me through my the gym website, which is undergroundperformancegym.com. And yeah, we're going to blow this thing up in California. I'm already planning several meet for the end of this year and several meets for next year. So I'm excited about that. So if you're looking for a good federation to compete in, there'll be fair competitions. And like I said, I'm looking for more referees, more officials. If anybody's got experience or experienced referee, they want to be a meet director, we have possibilities for that as well.
Okay, well, let's answer some questions since we're almost at the hour mark. Let me see if there's any good ones in here. The whole glutes thing, that was the whole, there's a lot of questions about glutes. That wasn't really a thing when you were first competing, right? Like shredded glutes.
Well, actually, Rich Gaspari.
What year did that come into play? When did that get popular?
Rich Gaspari was the first one to have the shredded glutes. So he's the one that made that popular, and that was mid 80s. And I remember actually I was at a show with Rich. It was God, what was it? It was something in Studio City. It was a pro show. And somehow I got backstage. Joe Weider actually let me go backstage because I was helping Edward Koak. And I was the only one backstage that wasn't a competitor. So everybody was asking me to put their oil on. So Rich, you know, I trained with Rich. We're like training partners sometimes at the gym. And he asked me to put the oil on. And I remember when I was going down near the glutes, he flexed one side of his glute and it just was like opened up into like little shelves. And the striation was so deep, you could put a quarter in it and you could see all the veins in his ass and everything. It was unreal. And he was the first one with a shredded glute. So that's when that came in. Because he was the first one. I remember Rich
talking about that on a podcast. He was like, I just had shredded. I dieted hard and they came in. It wasn't like he was trying to go for it. That's what he said. He's like, you know.
Yeah, but he always trained like heavy squats, heavy deadlifts. So I mean, he had the development in the glutes to have that. And then he would get super peeled. Yeah.
So then how long after that became like a judging factor where people were like, oh, well, his glutes were harder than his glutes. That showed more condition. Because in the early 90s, that was already a thing. They already had shredded glutes.
Yeah. So like basically Haney kept winning just because he was, you know, the biggest guy on stage. He beat Rich several times, even though Rich was more conditioned. Haney was just so big, you know, he was just so wide and his back and everything was so much bigger than everybody else. But I think really after Lee Haney, then came Dorian Yates and with the conditioning, and then there it was.
What cycle would you use to get that prime Calvin von Moger look? It's not a certain cycle. That's his genetics, how he looks.
People I don't know what they mean by prime Calvin von Moger look. What he doesn't look that great to me. I don't know what are they looking at?
Well, he's overhyped. Did he even he competed like a couple like local shows, right?
I don't know, but he's supposedly making a comeback, but he couldn't win a pro card right now. Like he couldn't win a pro card. If he went into USA's in the next few weeks, he would not even place.
No.
So I don't know what
they hyped him up a lot because he played in that Weeder movie as Armon.
I know, but other than that, I mean, his look, like, what about his look? He looks like I have 4 or 5 bodybuilders in my gym that look like that. You know,
he had decent arms, and that's pretty much. He didn't have any 3D muscle. He wasn't thick. He didn't have any crazy conditioning.
even right now, they're
He
like,
was
he's
just
making
that
a
person
comeback.
they
A comeback to what? He never was a great competitor. So what is he coming back to? Coming back to social media, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Coming back to social media because he can't. Bro, he jumped off that thing. He's never going to be the same. He hurt a lot of it.
Even
you know
if
how back
even
pain
if
is.
he was
He
before
jumped out of the second story window.
before he was not even won a national competition. So he's never been like oh my God, pro status bodybuilding wise. I don't know what. I guess we're in the era of social media. You don't have to be like that great. You know,
Yeah.
you could just be like okay, and you got a big following. So then that's the look.
Because like he's making a comeback, and I saw that too. Like there's no comeback, and they showed his physique. He won't be able to look like he did before. He did a lot of damage to his body with the meth use and the when he jumped out of that second story. Like I forgot what all he injured, but before that, I think he tore his bicep or his quad twice, and he would just get injured all the time. And he was probably already smoking meth then, because that makes you very dehydrated and prone to injury. So it probably just got more serious, and that's when he was just doing it full time.
You know, it reminds me
of
there's a guy that puts out these I think it's called V Shred or something like this. This guy that puts out diets. He has ads all over social media for the diets for the stars, and he's always with his shirt off, and he looks like a little GQ model guy. And like and like people like look at that and like think that like that's like he's the shit. And I'm like, you look like just a dude that just started working out.
Like on RX Muscle the other day, I sent Dave the picture. I'm not sure. I think he posted it. This guy is literally 135 pounds. This Asian guy, 135 pounds, and people. Like his comments, and no hate, that's good for your game. And man, I wish I could be 135 when I was, I don't know how old I was when I was 135, but a freshman year in high school, I think. And, have this following. You look through the comments, and people like 3 times better looking than this guy is asking him for his advice. And I'm like, this is crazy. I understand, you don't have to look the part. A lot of great coaches were never even good bodybuilders, like Hani Rambad. He was never a body. I think he competed in like one local show, and he said he tore his knee. He was never a good bodybuilder, but he's considered as one of the best coaches today. But so many people are just like the read and regurgitate guys that just read all this information and then just repeat it on a YouTube. It's just, we read all this stuff. We all, before YouTube, we had to read books and medical books and steroid journals and all these different things. We had to read that. We just didn't pop on a YouTube and hear someone's opinion like, oh, okay, we'll believe that. And so,
not only that, back in our day, unless you competed and won at a high level, no one knew who you were. You got no respect. Now you open a YouTube channel, you could be just Joe Blow anybody, and you got a lot of followers, and that's it.
And I get it. Things change. And then when it first changed, a lot of the bodybuilders retired around the IG around 2012, 13, when Instagram kind of came out and got popular. It was getting popular and all that. And I had a hard time seeing, like, okay, what is this? You post a picture and then people just like, this is never going to go. And then it blew up. And so you got to grow with the times, unfortunately. And it took me several years to kind of get into it. And I'm like, if you don't do this, like, for coaching, whatever, there was already coaches that, that weren't even good coaches with like a big clientele. And I'm like, who are these people? And people don't look at like, where did this person come from? They're just looking at now, like who this person is or whatever. Like, what is their background? What makes them know this information? Who are their clients that they prep? Where are some transformations? And people just go, it's really bad on TikTok. I know you just joined, but bro, it's not even the same world. Instagram's way different. I mean, it's crazy, the questions you get asked and the mentality, but you've got to remember, you're talking mostly like 15-year-olds to 20-year-olds. And I'm not discriminating against that age. I'm just like, there's some pretty insane questions. And these kids think there's just some magic combination of steroids you're going to take. And people on there preach that. The cool thing is to talk about what you take now and That's great that it's more open and people can talk about it, but that's all they think about. And they think that's number one, and then training. And if you tell them otherwise, they just don't believe you and think you're a liar. And they don't work hard. It's really, it comes down to how I know you have a hardcore gym, and it's rare I go into a gym and see someone training hard. I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, I have a hardcore gym, and we still, I would say, we have people that do train hard there, but most of them, not everybody does. But they probably train harder than a 24-hour fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, Crazy Land's the name of it, that documentary I did. It's funny, that documentary, how I got it. Like, I wasn't supposed to be in it, and I showed up in Metroflex that day. And I don't know if did I already tell this, Larry? Last time? I don't think so. There was this guy, maybe I did, maybe didn't. This just goes to show you like how like being shitty. This guy told me the wrong time to show up. That was doing the documentary in the first place. He was Ronnie Coleman's like little protege. I was actually prepping him though. And he's like, yeah, they're shooting at 3. You should come up there. Maybe they'll pick up someone extra for the documentary. At this time, it was just for the Discovery Channel. Netflix didn't pick it up yet. So I show up earlier because the guy from mostmuscular.com I was friends with, I was like, hey, let's shoot before then. And then we can eat and then go back to the gym. So they were shooting like early at 11. So I showed up early, and the guy told me the wrong time. So I would show up and they had already, be done or whatever. Or it was the wrong time. I wouldn't have ran into them there. So they ran into me, and I was like 2-3 weeks out from nationals. They all came in. They're like, do you want to be this documentary? This. I'm like, yeah. They're like, then they went and talked. They were all down here from England. It was like 15 of them. And they came back and they're like, hey, do you want to be one of the main guys? We got to kick this other guy out though. I was like, yeah, of course. Sure. And then the guy that told me initially the wrong time, he got like way less. He was supposed to be the main guy on the documentary. And so his time went from like this to just, I even had more screen time than him. So then Netflix picked it up in I think 2013 and 14. And that was a big thing to be on Netflix. So that was pretty good for business. And how many times did you lube up the competitors?
Once. That one time.
It was normal.
I just that one time backstage. And it was like just
oil is so important.
I think it was just Rich Jasperry really that I really helped with the oil. That was it.
See, when I have clients that are local shows,
I went to a lot of photo shoots where Joe Weider lubed them up. I probably a dozen of those. Yeah,
you had those guys that love oil. You would have you competed at the John Lindsay shows. Did you compete
a lot?
John Lindsay? Okay,
oh yeah, I knew John Lindsay like well. I competed in his shows for decades.
The last time you competed at his show, were they still holding it at the high school in?
It was Veterans Memorial Auditorium.
Yeah.
Where they had it, and they had it there for the longest
time. Out that back door.
What's that?
Out that they had the pump up room. It was real small. So were all the gay guys out the door when you were doing it, or no?
No. Actually, they wouldn't really let people in the pump up room unless you were a competitor.
No, they were actually outside. So the pump up room, there were that exit door because it got too crowded in that little pump up room. So
yeah, I don't remember seeing any gay guys hanging out back there. No.
Okay, so I guess
it was actually a pretty good pump up room. They actually had weights. Today, now Tamer runs it with Tarek, and they run it in this hotel. And they don't even allow weights back there. There's rubber bands. That's it.
Yeah.
No
weights. A lot of shows do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. It's hard to put in a lot of dumbbells and stuff, but you get it. I don't know how you like that
Veterans Memorial Auditorium. It was like a real auditorium where they actually had real like concerts and things. Now it's in like they're doing USA's and all the shows right now in like this just a hotel with the big ballroom, but it's flat, so there's no seating. It's totally different now.
Yeah. I think I did John Lindsay's show, the Mr. LA, I think 2007, the first time. And at that time, that was the first time I was there. Like outside the pump up room. It was outside because it was exit door. They had that propped open, and you were pumping up out there too, because it was probably a bigger show because they had more classes and all that now. But there was just tons of gay guys out there just giving you their cards, and you get a stack of cards this much, and you just call each one. And some was for posing. A lot of them were for photo shoots.
You know, maybe they were the only time I got approached. There was a guy on the East Coast named Tony. He was a photographer, and he photographed all the bodybuilders backstage at the national level shows, at like North Americans and nationals. And he would take your pictures and he'd send them to you for free. He would just do it. And then the last show I did I think I went to North Americans, and he's like, after the show was over, he's like, let's do a photo shoot, right? And I'm like, okay, where do you want to do it? And he goes, well, let's go outside on the grass. And I'm like, why not just right here? He's like, well, let's go outside. We could do some like outside stuff, right? So I go out there, and he's like, let's do some artistic stuff. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, why don't you like lay it on the grass and like put your head like this and do this? I'm like, no, dude, like I'm not doing that. And then he got mad, and I'm like, and that's the last time I did a photo shoot with him. He's like, I want you to lay like this and put your head like this and, you know, do something like that. I'm like, I'm not laying on the fucking grass in my posing shorts and doing some weird shit.
Bill Comstock was like that. He was a famous photographer, and we actually became close friends. And I stayed with him in Venice a couple times. And the first time I was like, dude, like, where do I sleep? Your apartment's this big. And he's like, oh, there's this thing he pulled in the middle. And I remember the next day I got out of the shower and I was like changing. And I'm thinking, I didn't even know he was gay at this time, but he's like, hold on. That's a really good glute shot. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? I just got out of the shower. No, we're not taking a picture of my glutes. And then that was his thing. He was obsessed with just like glutes. He shot a lot for Arcs Muscle eventually. And I think he was shot a lot for muscular development because he would always publish, like he was famous for doing like a lot of black and white photography. This was like around 2006 or 7 and up. But we shot every year together. And that was fine. This is my client on here. He did turn pro. It was a gift, and I heard he stopped competing right after. I guess they're talking about that guy we were just talking about, Callum. Did he turn pro? I guess so. I don't know. But we're in the time that a pro card doesn't mean anything anymore. Unfortunately, that changed a long time ago. Alex Eubanks is another one. Kid is 155 with no muscle and thinks he's Mr. Olympia. I know this kid just from a lot of these people, Larry. You'll just know him, even though you don't want to, just from TikTok. So this kid, he seems like a nice kid, but there was all these like model shots of him, and I guess he looked like a shredded like fitness model. Then people would see him in public, and they would be like, dude, the dude has literally no muscle, and he's natural and all that, and I believe that he's natural because he doesn't even look like he hardly works out. It looks like he's a swimmer. But people are like, man, they're crazy about this guy's physique. I'm like, dude, this guy doesn't even look that way. But he's really popular, and I think we've even talked to him on Arcs Muscle before. I can't stand the broccoli hair SARM kids at the gym with their pajamas. Do you get any of those in your gym or no?
No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be at like your gyms that people go to for the lighting. Literally gyms. Certain new gyms they come out, they call them influencer gyms.
I think it might be more popular back where you're at, not where I'm at.
Yeah, there's some. You're in. I
don't have any Sam Sulek trying to lookalikes at my gym.
No, I'm not talking about your gym. Here in Dallas,
I don't have any of those guys. I know that Romano talks about these people trying to like emulate Sam Sulek and with the hair and all that stuff, but I haven't seen it in my gym.
Yeah, they're not going to be at a hardcore one like that. There's some here in Dallas, there's some in Houston, and then Bradley Martin's gym he's in California, but I'm not sure where he's at.
He's in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay, so those type gyms, like it's just all about tripod. Like the gym I go to, which is, they have amazing equipment in Irving, Absolute Recomp. It's a beautiful gym. I mean, they literally it's like a mini oxygen gym. It's huge. It's like an old Dick's Sporting Goods. So you can picture that size. But it has a sign that says like, yes to tripods, yes to this. So all that stuff that's influencer. And, you know, it's just crazy how many people think they're going to become the next, you know, Sam or whatever with, you know, no muscle at all. Alex looks great on something for sure.
I think we were supposed to get into talking about different cycles. That was part of the
thing. I don't know if we're going to have time for that today. I'll let you answer this one. What's your thoughts on gear from Mexico?
Well, I can tell you exactly what it is. First of all,
and then at the end, we'll give we'll answer a few questions, and then we'll give our our biggest cycle we ever did. I think that's what we were going to do. So go ahead.
So anyways, before me, there was Dr. Cohen. He had 4 different brands out. It was Quality Vet, Denkel, Animal Power. It's 3. Yeah, Quality Vet, Denkel, and Animal Power were all his 3. And they was really good stuff and dosed correctly and everything. And at the time they were supplying, I think they said like 75% of the US market. And then when they took Dr. Cohen down, I went down there and started Stallion Labs, and we ran that for about a year till Operation Raw Deal. And we had the best quality, and we were doing really well. And then when Raw Deal came down, after that, everything's fake. Everything's fake down there. And unless you get some pharma stuff that's, you know, like in a pre-made syringe, and it's like a 50 milligrams of Deca in a milliliter in a syringe with an 18 gauge needle on it. But and it's super expensive too. So, but everything else down there is fake. So
yeah, I tell people that all the time. It's just like it is here. Like people just make it and they sell it to the pharmacy.
I would say it's worse now down there. Probably.
Yeah. The last time I touched something from on there, I was on a cruise, I think in 2016 or 17, and I forgot my testosterone. Like it was just a 7-day cruise, but we're at just the pharmacy there. I got an ampule of, I think it was Test Pro. And so I was expecting it to hurt, but I mean, I shot that in my shoulder and I was literally screaming for like 10 minutes in pain. Like, you know, I've never made gear before and all that, but I was lucky I didn't get an infection, but it wasn't good. It wasn't clean. I don't know what was in there or not, but it's completely different now. Larry, have you ever tried a UGL back in the day called New Farm? They were Canadian.
No, never heard of them. Can't comment on
Guys, there's so many brands out there. I mean, I could start a company and have 5 different brands. I mean, I get asked all the time, what do you think of this brand? There's no more brands anymore. There's just underground brands. And or like when Larry had his big time one, now little kids are making gear. Like I know all these, you know, 16, 17-year-old kids, they make gear, they get the raws. It's so easy now. They put a pretty little label and people are injecting this stuff into their bodies.
Well, I can tell you my guy, he's been doing it since back when I was doing it. And he's a close friend of mine, and they make legit stuff, and it's dosed correctly and it's good. No.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not out there still. It's just most of the stuff is.
Yeah.
If you don't, like, people always ask where to get gear. If you don't know where to get gear, you probably shouldn't be taking it because.
Yeah, you got to know your source.
When you know when it's time and you know you've earned the stripes to take gear and all that, I think.
I know a guy in my area. He worked for me as a front desk person a few years ago. He's a straight up heroin addict, in and out of fucking prison. And he's been dealing like rec drugs his whole life. And he just decided now that he opened a gear lab and he's making gear. And I would not trust anything that guy touched, because I know like he's a regular drug guy. He is not even a bodybuilder. He doesn't even know anything about
a lot of people
this stuff. He saw money opportunity, and now he's like making gear. And I know it's crap.
And since gear's so, like normal now, it's like to take just not bodybuilders, the first thing people, when they first start working out, it's like, what cycle do I take? I'm like it's like the norm now. So, regular dope dealers are, usually selling gear too. There's a lot of money in. Do you have what's your biggest cycle you ever did, Larry? You can go first or I can go first.
So, I mean, honestly, I've never been a high dosage person. I remember back in the, I want to say mid 90s, I competed with this Italian guy, and he told me like the secret was like 4 grams of or 5 grams of tests a week. And that was what these European guys were doing. And I remember I tried, I think I went up to like 4 grams of tests, and I did it for like 2 whole weeks. And after 2 weeks, I was like, this sucks. I feel like shit. My strength is not going up. I feel sick on it. And I never went high dosage after that. I want to say like off season, I would run like maybe a gram of everything total to 1,500 milligrams. And pre-contest, I would get up to like, I'm talking right before contest, I'd get up to like 2,500 milligrams, everything combined, and I never went really over that. Like right now, I'm on 600 milligrams. That's it. But I'm not like trying to do anything. But I think but I do know a famous power lifter who I trained with for a long time, and he broke a raw world record. And we added up everything that he was taking the week before he broke that record. And it was 10 grams. It was 10 grams of Tren, Tess, D-ball, and Anadrol. 10 grams total. And I couldn't believe it. But I knew it was true because he was getting it from me. And we sat there and added it all up because he didn't even know how much he was taking. So we just counted. It's
amazing what some people can put in their body and not get sick.
But then keep in mind, he only did this like the week before the lifting thing. He didn't do that all year long. And then right after his competition, he went completely off.
Okay. So it's different. Bodybuilders, powerlifting and bodybuilding is completely different, and what's important, how that's all, so mine was, I met Dave when I was like 23. Before that, I did 4 shows and I won all 4 shows. And then I met Dave at nationals. And so before that, me and 2 of my friends, we would just get whatever we had and we would share, like, oh, hey, I've got a bottle of Winstrol. I got a couple bottles of Test. I have 100 Clintabs. And so it was just whatever we had. So it was like, before I met Dave, it was like maybe a couple shots of Test a week, couple shots of Winstrol, a little bit of Clin, and that was pretty much it. When I met Dave, Dave didn't have me take very much at all either, but I had me and Dave became real close friends pretty fast. And so one year I wanted to hire Hani. It was a real political time at that time too. Like either like Hani or George, they were both like really good friends with the judges. And it was just, so I was like, let me hire Hani because I'm not friends with Hani and I want someone to be like just extra critical with me. And Hani was working with only the top pros at that time. He wouldn't take a client on unless he thought he could turn them to a top pro. A couple of my friends, I try to introduce him. He's like, I can't do anything with him. So he wouldn't even take someone on. So he's already looking at the person's genetics. And so that's how a lot of these people get top clients too. So at 20 weeks out, I was doing a gram of Test. This is when I hired Hani. When I was with Hani, 1,000 milligrams of Test, 1,000 Test Cypionate, 500 Test Pro. This is per week. 800 Deca, 800 EQ, 50 Proviron, 50 Anadrol, 8 IUs, GH, 1 Arimidex every other day. The next 4 months, I would add in a little hardeners. And then at 8 weeks out, this was like the most stuff I really ever took. I would cut out the Deca, cut out the EQ. I would increase the Proviron to 150 milligrams per day. Added in Tren Hex every other day, 76 milligrams, 100 milligrams of Masteron every other day, 50 milligrams of Winstrol every other day. Anavar 50 milligrams a day. And then I would add in Halo testing at 20 milligrams for the last 2 weeks. So that was the most I ever took. And the Anadrol made me feel a little sick. But I was waiting till I got a higher level to really push it. So I never got to like push it like a lot of people I was around did, because I was prepping myself to compete and I stopped competing early because I had to do those shoulder surgeries and the industry change. But I think that's why a lot of the guys I competed with passed away or had kidney issues, because I didn't take much at that time. And then I took a long break with only taking like testosterone and VAR, testosterone and EQ. And for 8 years, I just recently added in, I had to do a shoot. I added in some Winnie and EQ. And that was only two stuff I've added in. I have, other than test and VAR, I haven't taken in 8 years. And so,
well, I don't think what people don't understand is like the gear is only going to work as much as the demand for it is. And that's caused by the training intensity and the amount of food that you're able to eat. So unless your training intensity is like really high and you're eating a lot of food, that gear is not doing anything. It's only allowing you to recover from the workout, So if you're not training super hard and you're taking a bunch of gear, it's not really doing anything. You need to make, it's like if you, let's say you eat a lot of food, but you don't train, well, you're just going to get fat. Same thing with the gear. If you're not training super hard, it's not going to build muscle. It's just going to float around your system, cause problems because it's not being used up.
Yeah, I mean, I get so many overweight clients, and they're like, what cycle do I need to take? Do I need to take Winstrol? I'm like, Winstrol is going to do nothing to your physique, because you have to be under a certain body fat percentage to even get a certain look. So, but you just, certain people, you just can't tell them that there's no amounts of drugs you can take to look like this. And some of my friends or acquaintances, they took the most stuff I've ever even heard of, and they hardly looked like they went to the gym. They were just probably so toxic, they weren't even using most of the stuff. Did you guys ever try real T-ball? I never did.
I have, and it's like one of my favorite things. And I can tell you, like, I hate Dianabol. I can't stand it. Like, I don't like the water retention, like the estrogen effect. I hate that stuff. But T-ball is great. Like, for some reason, it increases your muscular endurance.
Yeah.
So like you can, whatever, like you have more ATP, and I think you can just like crank out more reps in a set with T-ball. So it's really good for that. And overall, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, everybody I know that's taken it, I've even had some clients that take it. They love it, and the same thing. Yeah, it's really good for your endurance.
Yeah, and if you stack it with Anavar, it works great. Like as a pre-workout, like 40 milligrams of T-ball and 20 milligrams of Anavar, and that's like a kick-ass pre-workout.
Does it kill your appetite? Even Anavar lowers my appetite significantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to do that too, but. Yeah. I would only take it on training days. I don't agree with this, taking orals like some people do it like twice a day, all week long. Just take it pre-workout. That's the only time you need it.
What's the difference between over-the-counter test and prescribed test? There's no over-the-counter test in the United States.
I think they're meaning UG or prescribed.
It depends who's making it. Like we said earlier.
Test is test. Either it's real or it's not. Simple as that. There's even some prescription testosterone that's dosed incorrectly.
Oh man, these compounding pharmacies, they prescribe so much underdosed testosterone. It's nuts.
Mm-hmm. I've had some of that prescription testosterone that I've gotten with a prescription. I get my testosterone out of the pharmacy, like with a prescription, like straight out of CVS, and I've had it underdosed.
So all my stuff from CVS has been good. If I use a compounding pharmacy, their testosterone is always like significantly lower. Like I can just tell, even if whether I'm on a TRT dose or I up my test, like now I've got it about 800. If it's from CVS, like those the 1 ounce bottles, or if it's another, compounding pharmacies, they're allowed to cut corners. They're like legally allowed. And then
there was a certain brand that was coming out of CVS for a while that we found out that was underdosed.
Well, I mean, I remember I read about in 2002, CVS, there was a lot of fake Seristims coming out of CVS at that time too. So they were, all these people with HIV were getting their growth hormone and it wasn't doing its job. And somehow all this fake Seristim worked its way into CVS and Walgreens. That's pretty bad, you know. So you guys, you never really know what you're taking, I guess. Here, you go ahead, Lester. Can you read this?
Touched on diet training gear. Do you think all the new science information is causing guys to think they can get away with just working smarter with less intensity? I think people are just lazy. Yeah, people are just lazier. You know, they just don't want to train hard like we did back in the day. And, you know, everything's easier now. You know, you have your cell phone, you drive everywhere. I mean, everything is just, life is just easier. So people have just gotten soft. And they're just not putting in the effort. And the gyms, like I have a hardcore gym. I have the only hardcore gym in like my whole county. And I've had people come from LA County, like bodybuilders, and said, wow, we've never seen a gym like your gym. Like I got all the baddest equipment because like I handpicked all my equipment, like original Nautilus and hammer strength and flex leverage and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, even the newer stuff, I've got the, what is it called? The new brand that's
Arsenal,
a few Arsenal pieces. I've got the Rogers squat, but, you know, most gyms are fitness centers and, you know, they're not catered to hard training. So people just,
I think, you know, also Barn, Larry hasn't seen so much of the craziness yet because he's not on TikTok yet, but these guys today are literally getting like a cable and just taking it slowly, twisting it like zero effort at all. And they literally think it's building more muscle than like barbell rows.
Oh yeah. When I opened my gym, I had a girl competitor come from another gym, bikini competitor. And she told me she was getting ready for competition. And I was watching her train and like she was on the leg extension machine and she was just like flapping her legs around with 10 pounds on there. I mean, like flapping her legs around, like there was, she wasn't even contracting the muscles. She was just like kicking the thing up and down. Like there was zero effort into it. And after watching this for a couple of weeks, I finally went up to her and I said, like, you know, I got to just tell you, I said, you know, your training sucks. And she went, I'm like, you're not even doing anything. You're not even working the muscle at all. You just like move stuff around. And I ended up training her and I taught her how to do deadlifts and squats, like real squats with a barbell. And now her in 1 year, she's like transformed herself dramatically, but she just didn't know. And I remember the first time I trained her, she was like, I had put 10 pounds on a cable cross machine. And she was like, oh, it's too heavy. I'm like, come on. Old women can do this. You can do this. And then we went to 20 pounds and then she did 30 pounds, in the same session right there.
You got a lot of exercise scientists and like a lot of medical people getting into the bodybuilding industry. And what they're doing is they are showing you like what you would do if you were rehabbing a muscle or functional training, something for elderly people. I had a guy, he lived here. He was one of those guys, like he was a very smart guy. We were doing a trade-off. I was going to prep him for a show and he wanted to he's like, just let me train you for 2 months. And I just want to see what I'm like, bro, like I'm going to get small training that way. Like you can't train that way. I'm talking about the perfect form, everything, how the muscle hinge moves. Like you pull like to the T. I was like, I promise you I'm going to get smaller. He trained me 8 weeks. And I'm like, look at these two pictures, we took pictures. He goes, okay, I'll give it to you. You're right. And he changed up his whole bit. I'm not going to say his name and all that, but he I'm still friendly with him. He has a really successful, he works with a lot of high elite athletes. He was a highly professional athlete himself. And it looks great on paper. And a lot of people don't understand when something looks great on paper, it's not going to do that exactly in the body with nutrition or training. Yes, over the years, you can train smarter. Like I think.
Let me clarify that. You can do perfect form, and that's great. Okay, nothing wrong with doing perfect form. You should do perfect form on all your exercises. I agree with that. But if you're doing perfect form and you're not putting any effort into the movement because you don't have enough weight on the machine or the bar to where you're going to failure and really pushing as hard as you can, then your perfect form doesn't mean anything. So you should do perfect form, but to complete failure with total intensity, with enough weight that you're actually stimulating the muscle to grow. And you could do sloppier form and grow too, because you're just lifting enough weight. And some people think sloppy form, and it's not sloppy. It's just you can use a little body language to get a couple more reps out of the movement. And that's not doing bad form. That's just knowing how to lift the weight correctly.
Yeah, you can incorporate cheating at the end is perfectly fine to get in a few reps. There's nothing wrong with that. Like for a while, there was these couple guys that have a big following on TikTok. They're kids or early 20s. They were saying that the V-bar grip is a useless grip, that it's not most optimal. It's better to do, and they're showing how to do it. A lot of people seen it. And I'm like, and people were actually believing this. And like, you look at every top bodybuilder and their argument was, these are the top genetics in the world. But if they did it this way, they would look even better, like Ronnie Coleman and Jay Cutler and Phil Heath. It's just, and then there's this big division now between like training types. And I tell people, just go train. Training's supposed to be fun. Everybody's so confused now.
Let's get something straight. Okay. Yeah. Genetics matter and it makes a big difference. And the top guys, they do have great genetics, but they also learned how to train properly and how to eat properly and how to take the proper amount of gear, or they wouldn't be the top guys, because you need all of it. Just the I've seen great genetics go nowhere. I've seen guys with amazing genetics that never even turn pro.
They can't diet. A lot of them can't diet. A lot of them
and they don't put any intensity into their training, and their personal and social life is messed up, and they can't stay on a program, and they never accomplish shit.
There's so many people like that, especially today.
You can't discount somebody like Ronnie Coleman and saying, well, it's just genetics. No, look at his training. He trained his ass off. That guy trained like an animal, like no one's ever seen. There's a reason he was 8 times Mr. Olympia and like the biggest, most shredded guy we've ever seen in history. Look at his training. Like no one is trained with that type of intensity and volume. No one.
No, like I said, I grew up with him. We even trained together after he was retired, and he was still strong then. It was just, he throws weights around. It's a playground for him. And he's like a little kid playing on a playground. He loves it. And I don't see people made like that anymore. And, it got to a point too, where I've had to change up my training. I can't train how I want to. It sucks, but it is what it is. And you just have to make adjustments. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up in the last couple minutes. Yeah, Nick Walker, he lifts really, really slow and all that, but he's lifting a lot of weight. I don't see many people train like Nick. He goes at a pretty slow pace. I know when
he's training with perfect form, but he does lift a good amount of weight and he goes to failure.
Yeah.
He's not not training hard.
When he went over to Dominique, my friend, Dave's friends with him too for prep. Dominique was trying to just get him to try some new training stuff, and he wasn't open-minded at all to it. And so it's hard. I get it.
He just did that video where he did that training session with Samson Data and Derek Lunsford, and they all did a chest workout.
Yeah.
And Nick had the best form, and he was the strongest of the three.
Nick is a hard worker. I mean, you know, he doesn't have the perfect, you know, obviously shape. He's a hard worker, and you know, he's like, you know, like Branch Warren. Branch Warren didn't have the perfect shape, but Branch Warren was an animal in the gym, and he outworked so many other bodybuilders that, you know, have that. We won't name names, but we know top bodybuilders over the years. They were known for not training that hard. They just had a mate. Like, well, look at Phil Heath. They called him the gift. I never even saw him deadlifting more than probably 3 plates, but he didn't have to. So, I mean,
I don't know. I saw Phil Heath do bent over rows with 3 plates on each side with perfect technique for like 8-10 reps.
Maybe that was a time when he was training with Jay, because I know.
No, this is a training video where he's just training by himself in that Colorado gym in the middle of the night.
Yeah. But he wasn't the strongest guy. Like, there was a lot, you know, Ronnie, Jay, they were kind of different level training wise. Armon, for a pre-contest cycle to local show for a physique or classic guy, can he get it done in 3 compounds, test, mass bar? Do you need to train to win it? Dude, people win. There's people that win. I know my first 2 shows, I won. I was natural my first 2 shows. You don't have to be taking a certain amount of chemicals. Obviously, when you get to a certain level, everybody's kind of pretty much taking the same thing, but you can just do that show with test or just with mass or win and probably get by if genetics.
My first cycle and my first show ever, I was 16 years old. I had Cyril Anavar, there were 2.5 milligrams. I took 3 a day for 30 days. So I was taking 7.5 milligrams of Anavar. That's all I took for that contest, and I won my first show. So
yep, I took Winnie and Glenn for my first. That was my 3rd show. That was the first time I took gear for a show. I took testosterone, I learned, and then I didn't know at the end. I just took Winnie and Glenn, and that was my 3rd show I won. But I have all my cycles in this book. I finally came out with a book a while ago, like last year, has all my cycles in it, because people always ask me this has everything I ever took up till like 30 or whenever I retired.
I'm going to answer that question about as far as like the trending and the win. Do you need it? No, you can get contest condition with like Test Master on an Anavar if you can get your body fat low enough. I can tell you trend does have a metabolic effect that it heats up your body, so you burn more fat. So it's easier with trend because you're burning more calories. But you can do it without trend for sure.
Trend's a great compound. I mean, I would only reserve it for contest time. You got people that take it just recreationally or year round in the off season. I would never use that in the off season. I would wait till because I didn't like how it made me feel. So I would take it maybe 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, and that's it. Let's do one more and then we'll roll. It's almost at 2 hours. Did you guys ever do beyond failure workouts when preparing for shows?
Always. Yeah. And I still do to this day. All of my training, I do drop sets and forced reps and negatives. Still to this day, every single workout.
I train a little lighter. I don't even call mine training anymore. I can train certain things a little more high volume. I can do a lot of high volume stuff that people maybe can't keep up with. I just can't lift heavier weights anymore. I've had several surgeries and they were non-gym related, but just having those surgeries and those tearing my tricep, pec, my shoulder surgery, I don't want to do that again and be out 6 months from the gym or something like that. So I have
things that I do but that other people don't do, but for training that allows me to train the way I do. I have some secrets, and I'm serious. There are secrets I learned from powerlifters that bodybuilders don't do. One is I use capsaicin.
Tendons have to be strong. A lot of bodybuilders neglect their tendons.
Yeah, Armon, I'm talking about stuff you don't know about because you don't do it. Because if you did the things I'm telling you to right now, you would be able to train a lot harder than you do. Capsaicin, I do religiously. It's basically, you can buy it out of CVS. I put it on my shoulders, my bicep tendons, my elbows, my lower back, and my knees. And it's heat. And last night, like I was training back and you could feel the heat radiating out of my shoulder. It was like you could see like steam coming out of my shoulder. That's how hot I get from the capsaicin, because when things are hot, they're pliable and they don't break. So I get like really heated up during a training session, and then I'm able to train harder and go to failure without breaking and straining shit. The other thing I do is like I lay on a mat and stretch and use a massage gun, and I dig out all the tight knots, and I'll do that for like 30 minutes before a training session. People don't want to do this, but in order for me to train the way I do it. I lay on a mat and I just take the massage gun and I go to my town on my lower back, my shoulders, my lats, my chest, everywhere. And I just dig out all the tightness out of it before I start a training session. Another thing is I use wraps and sleeves. And I people think, why do you need all these wraps and sleeves just to do a regular workout? Well, because I don't want to like tear my bicep tendons. I don't want to tear my tricep tendons. I don't want to wreck my knees any more than they already are. So I do use sleeves and wraps and stuff like that. And it saves my joints. It really does. And that's why I'm able to train the way I am and not break things. And I remember somebody commented in one of my videos, you have to wear all that shit just to do this lift. Yeah, I do, because 57 years old, I've torn up my whole body and so many injuries, and I don't want any more injuries. And since I've been doing these rituals with the heat and the wraps and stuff, I don't break shit. So it does work and it matters. But people are lazy. I'll tell you why people don't do it. It's not because they think it doesn't work. They don't. I can tell you, I have guys that come in to train with me. While I'm laying on that mat, stretching with a massage gun, they're sitting there waiting for me to finish. Instead of stretching there too, and also working on themselves with the massage gun, they're just sitting on their ass, watching me, waiting for me to finish so we can start the workout, because they don't want to do it.
It's hard to get people to warm up and to warm up properly. Like my shoulders, before I do chest or shoulders, I warm up my shoulders for about 15 minutes. My wife's a PT, so she's always been good on me doing that. But it's after I had my shoulder surgeries, I didn't warm up much before then because I didn't have to. And then I have to now. I would do my shoulders. And if I don't, my shoulders hurt really bad. I got a tear in my right one that I had to do physical therapy on.
Try putting capsaicin on your shoulders next time before you train.
Yeah, I have some. We have some here. I got that.
Yeah, just put a little drop on it and rub it in real good. And make sure you wash your hands really good, because if you touch your eye or your private parts, you're going to hate life. But put that on and then dig on it with the massage gun before you train, and then go train your shoulders and watch how like your shoulders are all loose and you're able to do movements that you can't normally do.
I used to use Tiger Balm a lot. Is it stronger than
that?
Yeah,
stuff's not. Capsaicin is like
hot. I used that, and then I had this horse rub they sold for horse.
I have the horse rub too, and I put that on top of the capsaicin. I do. I put the capsaicin on.
The horse rub worked.
On top of it.
The horse rub worked. I haven't used it. I haven't used it in years.
In a blue bottle. Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're almost at 2 hours. We went way over today. Thanks for joining. If y'all are in Larry's area, go check out his gym. He'll give out the address and all that. Guys, the product line, we only have 2 of 6 out now. It's being sold on my website, armonadibi.com. We have our other line, Adibi Armon Nutrition, with its 5 supplements. The other several should be out in the next several months. So it's all being sold on armonadibi.com right now. AMG Labs will be up and probably in the next month. And y'all check out Larry's gym. Larry, give out that.
Right now at Underground Performance, we have a Memorial Day special. 4th of July Day special, and it's 0 enrollment on all term memberships, and also 20% off on all products on our website. So we have full line of HD Muscle, Chemex, Black Magic. All those products are 20% off with a code. Use code 4July, and it's at undergroundperformancegym.com. And like I said, we have 0 enrollment going on through the 6th.
All right, guys, peace out. Yeah, I mean, it matters your training environment. When you're around a certain, like me growing up in Metroflex, that gave me a different mentality. And if I was working at like a local 24-hour fitness than that, because it's just a different environment, and it will make a difference, especially if you grow up on that. If you're young, I think younger people, when they join their first few gyms, really matter what they see and what kind of molds them. So go check out Larry's gym, guys. Next week I go out of the country Thursday, so we'll talk and maybe we'll try to do it before I leave or just skip that week. But I'll contact you and we'll post all that, guys. Thanks for joining. Y'all have a happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, guys.